When I did the last Glashutte Original video on the SeaQ Panorama Date, loads of people in the comments were saying, great, but what about the normal SeaQ? And that's what we've got today. Welcome back to Bark and Jack, I'm Adrian, and just quickly before we get into the main part of the video, I've got a new Grand SeaQ. I mean, look at that thing. This is, I mean, technically this is a really very good mask. Little Grand SeaQ, I think it's pretty cool. But let's get into the main part of the video, and that is talking about the Glashutte Original SeaQ. This was originally launched in 2019, and it kind of upset the Glashutte Original fans because it was perceived as a departure from the norm being kind of dressier watches, not tool watches. But actually this is heavily inspired by a watch that Glashutte Original did in 1969. So not so much a departure from the Glashutte Original norm, but rather kind of going back. I've got nothing against dress watches. I really like the look of dress watches, but personally I have no requirement for a dress watch. And I just naturally gravitate towards tool watches, sport watches. For me, the introduction or reintroduction of these watches kind of put Glashutte Original on my map. It was a brand that I didn't really have that much desire to explore because it didn't do anything that... I mean, we're attracted to looks first in lots of aspects of life, and certainly when it comes to something like a watch, I'm attracted to looks first and then check out the technical stuff later on. And now I see something that I like. Just like with the SeaQ Panorama Date, Glashutte Original were kind enough and trusting enough to lend me these watches. This isn't an advert for Glashutte Original, this is just my thoughts on these watches. In the previous video I compared the SeaQ Panorama Date to the Rolex Sea-Dweller, or a two-tone Submariner, simply because they're all dive watches and they're kind of within the same price banding. And that's kind of the same with this SeaQ. It could easily be compared to a Submariner, both dive watches, and both sit within the same price banding. Let's check out the specs. So we have a 39.5mm wide case, it's 12.15mm deep, the lug to lug is 47mm wide, and the lug width is 20mm wide. The lume is Super-LumiNova, the crystal is Sapphire, and this one has a solid case back, and it has 200 meters of water resistance. Just like its bigger brother, the Panorama Date, this is also ISO 6425 rated. The movement inside is an in-house caliber, an automatic in-house caliber 39-11, and they stated that it is exquisitely finished, although we can't see it. It beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour and has a 40-hour power reserve. The bezel on this thing is just amazing, just like the other SeaQs. It's just solid. There's no give whatsoever. It's one of the shining kind of features of this watch. It's literally one of the shining features of the watch because it's made of ceramic, but it's just that action. It's got a solid, really thumpy click to it, and then it just doesn't move whatsoever. I guess a big thing about this watch, and the very obvious thing about this watch, is that it's really characterful. It just oozes character. It feels like it has personality to it, which is very different from other dive watches within the same price banding. I haven't mentioned the price yet for a reason, because we kind of need to talk about it. The dial is incredible, and it kind of encompasses the whole concept of this watch, how it's heavily vintage inspired, but it's executed with modern processes and uses modern materials. For example, just look at the numerals. We have these very vintage inspired numerals, but they are very neatly smothered in Super-LumiNova. It has this hue of creaminess about it, the faux patina, but this is going to be a very reliable lume. With the hands, we have these massive sword hands that are also completely smothered in lume, and then the case is this awesome vintage inspired dive case, but it's a decent size. It's not too large. It's 39.5mm wide, so it sits, well, it's sub 40, which is smaller than the majority, and it also appears to be thin. I mean, 12.15mm thick isn't massively thick, but the appearance and wearability of this watch, the way that it's got lots of contours, it's got lots of layers to it, which makes it a lot more wearable than most dive watches, and it also certainly has the air of being thin because some of that height is hidden in that case back, which isn't all that visible from the wrist. And then finally we have the Sapphire Crystal, this heavily domed sapphire crystal which really distorts the dial, kind of making it difficult to take photographs of it, but I do find domed sapphire to be really quite pleasing. Now, with all of that in mind, with all those specifications and the styling, we've got 200 meters of water resistance. We've got this nice vintage inspired watch with an in-house Calibre movement, completely in-house movement that has 40 hours of power reserve. This watch costs £7,400 on the rubber strap. That's a lot of money. That is a huge amount of money. Previously, with the SeaQ Panorama Date, we had an open case back. We could see the movement behind, and that's where the money's spent. Finishing a movement, finishing anything takes time. Time is money, and if you're dealing with tiny components, it's going to take you a long time to finish these fiddly little things to a high standard. I can't see the movement in the back, and I know that's where the money is spent on this movement. It's an in-house movement, and as they say, finished to an exquisite standard. But I can't see that, and I want to see that. The thing that I find frustrating the most is the strap that this comes on. I feel like this strap doesn't work with this watch, especially after getting hands-on with the really nice nylon grey, dull grey nylon strap that the previous watches came on, and that bracelet. The bracelet that Glashutte Original do is just mind-blowingly good. It costs more money. On the bracelet, this is £8,700, but that's understandable because the bracelet really is amazing. It has a hidden bracelet extension system. You press the little logo on the bracelet and the bracelet extends. That package is superb. This vintage inspired rubber strap just doesn't do anything for me. You know it's coming up, don't you? This is inevitable now. I mean, some people might say that it's becoming predictable, but you know what sort of strap would look good on this. A Bark & Jack NATO strap 2.0. These straps are going to be launched in just a couple of days. This strap is all of the little tweaks that I've done up until now on the NATO strap to kind of create the perfect, what I kind of see as the perfect NATO strap. All of these new NATO straps will be announced in the next few days. So jump over to barkandjack.com and sign up to our newsletter. Now, for me being a watch enthusiast, but a watch wearer, so someone who wears watches to get use out of them, I want a watch that is highly functional, and I do see for £7,000 I'd want a longer power reserve than 40 hours. Tudor, for example, within the Black Bay 58, I have 70 hours of power reserve. Now I'm simply just comparing stats for stats. I completely appreciate that the products are completely different. The finishing, the engineering that's gone into these two products is they are of highly different levels. But for me, for that amount of money, I do want something that is highly usable. And that's what I loved about the SeaQ Panorama Date, is that watch, the whole product, it's a very expensive watch. £12,000 is a truckload of money. But that package is incredible. And maybe it's a challenge because I saw this watch after seeing that Panorama Date. I could see that movement, I could see everything about that watch I loved, and genuinely, if I had that level of cash, I would get a Panorama Date. I think that thing is just sensational. I love it. But for me, there would be other things that I'd spend my money on other than this watch. That's just my take on it all. But guys, let me know your take on this. Maybe I'm missing something on this watch. Maybe there's something that I've overlooked on this watch, and so just give me some feedback. Look, drop me a comment down below and let me know what you think of this SeaQ. I think it's a gorgeous looking watch. I think aesthetics wise, maybe it just needs an open case back. Maybe that's just all it needs. Don't know. Guys, drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this piece. If you like this video, then give me a thumbs up. If you like the style of this video, then hit that subscribe button down there and a little bell icon so you get notifications when I drop a new video. If you're interested in articles, there's been articles reviewing more affordable watches, dive watches around £1,000, or tool watches rather around £1,000. They've been going up. We've just done an article on the Christopher Ward C65. A very different watch to what we've been looking at today. But if you're interested in that sort of stuff, jump over to barkandjack.com and check that stuff out. If you're interested in a watch accessory, we've got more stock of our watch pouches and our whiskey shell Cordovan straps. So jump over to barkandjack.com and click on the little shop button and check out the stuff we have over there. And give me a follow on Instagram at barkandjack. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.